Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next session of today's ESG Summit. I'm just going to quickly tell you a little bit about the speakers, but rather than telling you about the speakers, I'll run a little animation. Okay, so this is going to be remarkably easy for me because I'm about to go and I'm going to hand over to Lizzie, who is going to be interviewing Brigadier Tim Simmons, OBE, followed by Nikar. And I'll bring you on straight away, Tim, and I will go and I'll leave you to it.
All right, thanks, Mike. Well, we already had a little bit of an introduction, Tim, but just allow me to say one sentence because joining me here today is Tim, who is a brigadier and head of climate change and sustainability for the British Army. He brings such a rare and powerful perspective today about what sustainability looks like in one of the world's most operationally and demanding organizations. So I'm really excited to talk to you. We only have about 5 minutes to do a quick interview, so let's dive in. And Tim, I really wanted to start with this question around one of the biggest challenges that I assume you have in your organization, which is around cultural change. So how do you move ESG from being seen as important to truly urgent with a big institution like the Army?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks, Nadine. Good to see you again. So I think that's and I think this is a really interesting question to kind of start this discussion around myths and legends. And this sort of, is it a myth? Is it a real problem? If I kind of paint the picture of where I think we are in the Army has got a zero-like focus on achieving its mission, and so. And we're constrained, like every other organisation, by fiscal restraints, by our capacity, what we've been asked to do, and how we do it, and that forces us often to look in the real short term. And so it'll come down to a decision around spending, around what we do with our activity, about what we do this year. And there's some bright folk running the Army. When I speak to the generals, I'm like, this is really important. We've got to get to it. And they're like, Tim, we know this is important, but if we don't do this stuff next year, then the urgent operational requirement that we have to meet, that we've been directed to meet by the government, we're not going to achieve our mission. Our mission will fail. So we can't ever have sustainability at the success of the mission, and therefore something that's really, really important. We all know it's important. It's very difficult to bring that into the urgent space, I suppose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was we did a bit of a pre-discussion, of course, yesterday, and we were talking about buzzwords and ESG becomes such a sort of trivial popular word that it doesn't really mean anything, and we were talking about the word transition and what that really means. So can you expand a little bit about why you personally don't really like to use terms like transition?
So and I spoke to Michael a bit earlier around kind of why I think that sustainability and defence are linked, and why I think sustainability is so important for us. Is that the world is moving into a situation where we've already abandoned the kind of the 1.5 and we're heading towards 2.4. The world is going to change in a manner that we can't even possibly understand yet. So anything that describes the word like transition sounds to me like it's linear and it's going to be orderly, and I just don't think it will be. I think it's going to be mad and chaotic, and I think it's going to happen to us really quickly, and I think there are opportunities in there as well. But how do we move people away from realizing that the sense of jeopardy isn't around the corner? It's not something that we've got to do by 2050. It's something that we have to grip and have to do right now.
Yeah, and it was actually similar in my interview this morning with Anu, who also said, I really don't like this whole plan for 2050 because it really takes away the focus on today and the little steps we can do in our current situations instead of trying to plan for something so big that will never happen, and we might not even be here at 2050. So what can we do today? You were mentioning also, is it more like a revolution? Is it more like just doing it than really that larger plan? So I really like that thinking of the linear versus the what is manageable for today.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and I think for me, it is. We've got to see it as a revolution. So that, if it is going to be, and that's kind of where, out of jeopardy, often you need that burning platform to drive change. That's often where the magic will happen. There's a bit there where if you talk to everyone about this sort of Malthusian catastrophe and the world's going to end, people immediately go into denial and they won't want to talk about it. So how do we do it in a way that it actually inspires people into action, and then everybody's strategies become action, because we feel that this is a revolution rather than this is some orderly transition that is all going to be fine. It's going to happen to us and we don't need to drive the change ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And especially in an organization like yours, I can also imagine that it becomes quite difficult to assess between what is really urgent, like literal survival, versus, okay, what is important for the longer term. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that in your organization?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to kind of what I was talking about at the beginning. It's it's really where we're driving mission success. And I was talking to a colleague from the NHS, and for them, they were saying sustainability is so important morally and ethically, but also kind of how they run their business, because it has impacts back on that. But they said sustainability, but never at the expense of making their waiting lists longer. So they've got to meet their mission first, and then they're kind of they're running their business in a more sustainable way. And I think for us, and I think that there are, like I said, I think there are opportunities as well. Within Jeopardy comes the opportunity. So if we were to get to the front of the energy technology revolution, then success for us starts to look like how quickly have we started to adopt some of the new technologies that are out there that will actually help us win. So therefore, it isn't a compromise for sustainability. It's actually giving us that competitive advantage and that edge that will help us win if we've got these new technologies that can help us sustain ourselves on the battlefield. We have less fuel, therefore, we have less logistic tail. There's a whole bunch of opportunity in all of this that, as well as just Jeopardy.
Absolutely. And I think we're coming to the end of almost 7 minutes, but I will just keep talking until Nicole appears. Because it's almost difficult to sort of imagine what are the sort of projects that you work on within the military. And you just gave an example, but also then how do you measure success in your programs? Can you just give a small example of what you do in the day-to-day?
Yeah, so I guess it ranges across different areas. So we've got a big estate across the UK. We're responsible for 1.5% of the UK's land across our training estates and our built estates. So if you think about the amount of energy that it takes to run the 750 sites, 100,000 buildings, so success could be easily measurable in that sense, in terms of how much energy did we use last year, how much less could we use this year, how much less gas and carbon emitting energy can we use, and moving to sustainable energy. So there are areas where it makes us more resilient, it can make it more cost effective, and also it could be much better for the environment. So there's some really tangible stuff we can measure to help us not only measure us to make sure that we understand why we need to change, but also to then measure our success.
No, that's great. Thanks, Tim. And I know you will be in the show today a little bit more, so people will hear more of your insights and your day-to-day business. But thank you for sharing this with us for now. And I'll move on to Nicole. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Lizzie.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
So I know there will be longer introductions later, but I just wanted to take 1 minute to introduce you to the people online, because you are one of the bravest people I know within this sustainability field. So I really am looking forward to our short interview. So Nicole joins us today as a system thinker and really an ESG and sustainability leader with over 20 years of experience driving ESG transformations where it really, really matters. So I love to just dive in and get to pick your brain a little bit. And I would love to start with a bit of a different question that I haven't asked one of the speakers yet today. And it's really about trends, because you're so much into the future and innovation in this area, that I'd love to hear from you. What do you foresee as impacting the industry in the next 5 years?
That's a great question, Lizzie. And yes, I am a futurist nerd, I guess, or at least self-proclaimed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, looking at, the trend analysis of things, what are the emerging ESG trends that I foresee, at least, impacting the field of ESG and sustainability in the next 5 years, maybe? Yeah. And that I'll break it down to 3 things. Let's see, and how they impact these 3 major trends, how they overlap in an enormous way as well. So three things. The global geopolitical unrest. Number one, we need to talk about that, because it's going to impact trade. It's going to impact, supply chains and international relations. Right. So the second one is globally misaligned policies. And we're seeing this, in North America against, what's going on in Europe, as well as Asia. It's across everywhere. So Europe is standing firm and working to simplify and reform policies and reporting to bolster, the competitive compass, because we have gone a little bit overboard with regulatory things that is stifling economic growth. So we have to talk about that as well. But meanwhile, there are other countries, I'm not pointing fingers, but they're massacring, climate and, environment and social things like DE&I policies across the board. So it's like, a witch hunt of sorts on some of these areas. And the third thing, which is like kind of the trickle down effect, is the corporate pullback.
Yeah.
I know in the last panel that we discussed a little bit about green hushing, and I think that this corporate pullback sort of goes hand in hand with that. So organizations worldwide are retreating from sustainability and ESG initiatives and their commitments. So you see that like pulling out of all the things that they've signed and agreed upon, whether it's net zero or, more social, even human rights things have been sort of pulled back. And that's surprising. So the overlap and the impact is this. And that is, there are real rising risks. There's falling alignment everywhere and the corporate silence thing again. And together they're like creating this landscape that's like making it harder to lead, easier to hide, and more economically perilous to stall. I mean, that's the sad aspect of it. And as the Financial Times reported, ESG is dead, long live ESG. And the sliver of hope I have is that, it'll be a wake-up call for both sides to answer, not just the side that's pro, but also the side that's against, and they'll have to answer what's real, what's measurable, the business value, not just the moral positioning, but, or the hopeful projections, as I said, like the ambitions versus the actual, achievements. But, we can't lean on buzzwords either, like woke capitalism anymore either.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you said, because it was mentioned earlier today as well. Now is the time for true, authentic ESG. Like what remains is like the core and the essence of it, and not the marketing buzzwords surrounding it. So
Absolutely.
really great. And you touched upon it a little bit already in your answer. But I think what is also difficult in this ESG landscape, especially in what you're describing with the trends, is how do you still even measure the success of your programs and outweigh all these complexities and the trends that you are describing?
Yeah, because it's a lot, right? I mean, CSRD, it's like, over 1,000 touch points here on measurement.
Exactly. Yeah.
We don't even know if that's even what we should be measuring. And that's a good point. So, Lizzie, for me, success in ESG outcomes or ESG comes down to this. Like, and it's something surprisingly simple. Do the benefits outweigh the liabilities? You know, too often companies are performing these like box ticking activities, right? And they're not focused on the strategic outcomes that are relevant to the business. You know, securing your, resources, your supply chain, looking at the resiliency in these uncertain times. So things like this, and the real impact means that you have to ask the hard questions. Is this particular initiative, net zero initiative or D&I initiative, reducing risk? Is it securing resource and business longevity? Right? Delivering competitive advantage in your industry. Now, if we're not measuring that balance, we're not, if we're not doing it strategically and honestly, we're not integrating ESG into business decision making at all. We're doing theater. And the goal is not just to look good on paper, but to build companies that are more resilient, more accountable, and ultimately more valuable to society.
Yeah, I absolutely believe in that, and the holistic view that you have to take to really integrate it into the DNA and the core of your business. And otherwise, it remains this nice initiative on the side, just not gonna move the needle, if you will. Yeah, great. So I've got time for one last question, and the question is, it refers to my statement of why I think you're such a brave leader in this field, and why I love to hear from your example, because we discussed it a little bit also yesterday. But my question is around, what is the boldest thing that you have done as a leader, and what did it cost you or your business?
Ooh, yeah. So I would say, like most ESG programs measure effort.
Yeah.
I like to measure trade-offs. And if it doesn't reduce risk or create value, it's not strategy. It's storytelling. And this happens, and you see it often, and it's hard to whistleblow these things. There was a panelist that I was in at last that was talking just about this in his own words, and I would say the boldest ESG decision or sustainability decision I made was holding a mirror up to leadership and asking the tough questions that no one wanted to face. And, fortunately, like, it sparked change, but it also made me expendable. I lost my role, but I kept my integrity. And in doing so, though, I proved exactly why ESG and sustainability leadership does matter, and why we should be asking these hard questions and pushing the needle forward and trying to set the record straight.
Absolutely. And I think this is also what we said about, the true, authentic ESG. This is what it is about. Are you able to carry the consequences of what you stand for, and showing the light on these darker problems that no one wants to really look at?
Oh, for sure. I mean, even the topic like no one wants to touch is the social aspect. And that was what I was working with, human and social capital. It is a very complex, very emotionally and value-driven area.
Absolutely.
And you have to have all your ducks in a row, and you have to understand how to read statistics and data the right way.
Yeah, and that is what is so surprising, because when you talk to people who are just literally only implementing these ESG guidelines, they often straight away go to carbon, or like what do we need to reduce, or sort of these laws, but they completely forget about the social aspect, and the human side of it, and how we bring human beings to their rights and to their core and their nature. So absolutely love the way you look at things and the way you approach it. Much to learn from you. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And I guess we're back to Mike, who's joining again.
Hi there. I'm just discovering that I'm a bit blurry, aren't I?
Yeah, that's
green.
you're white green. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
well,
greenwashed.
that's right. I'm green. Yeah. I'm going to bring
AI
Petra
will
on
for you.
straight away, if I can find her. There you are. And thank you very much, Nicole
Thank
and
you.
Lizzie. I'm going to say goodbye to you now, but thank you very much. In fact, I think Nicole's. Are you on? Nicole, are you back on again in a few minutes, aren't you?
I will be, yes.
Yeah. So I'll
see
see
you
you in a few
soon.
minutes. See you in a few minutes. Petra, so I don't know why I'm so like this. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I'll try and sort that out in a minute. But Petra, you've got a little demo for us. And you're going to, can you just, first of all, can you introduce yourself? Sorry. Oh, I think you're on mute. Well, I can't hear you anyway.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Oh, that's
So
better.
now-
Yeah, we're there.
Yeah, okay. And you see my screen already with the En-ROAD as well? Can you see En-ROAD as
I
well?
can't see your. At the moment, I can just see you.
Oh, okay.
But
So it's not working yet. So as always, we try everything before and then it doesn't work, but it's funny. Okay, let's first introduce myself. So my name is Petra Moulton-Hill. I'm professor at Nottingham Business School, Nottingham Trent University in the UK. And I'm also the co-chair of the United Nations Prime Working Group on Climate Change. And also, and this is, I think, what is important for today, because I want to share En-ROADS with you. So I'm an ambassador for En-ROADS in the UK. And I want to share En-ROADS because I think it's a fantastic tool, and it's developed by MIT and Climate Interactive. And I hope I can now share it with you. Let's see that it works. We have tried it before, and it should come up now. So can someone confirm that you can see it now?
well, at the moment, I can't see it. But but it
Because
worked. We managed to get it to work yesterday, didn't we? So it should
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, I mean, it says to me that I'm sharing this tab to StreamYard.com. So on my side, it looks okay.
Okay. Well, I can't. I wonder whether I need. Hang on a second. It's my fault. There you go. I should have cooked. It's my fault. So I'm gonna come up now, Petra, and I'll let you talk through the product.
Everyone can see it now. Yeah, everyone can see it.
Everyone can see it, but I would ask people if they have any questions, send me a message, either a comment or if one of the guests send me a message in the private chat, and I'll bring you on the screen.
Okay, good. Then thanks, everyone. So what I want to say is this is a tool which was developed by MIT and Climate Interactive, and is also always updated by MIT and Climate Interactive because it's really based on the real data. So it's not just kind of a simulation which makes up a bit of data. It's a real data because we were talking about myths and facts and so on. So it's based on facts. And what it shows you, you can see it already, that at the moment we are heading towards 3.3 degrees if we don't change anything. And this is based on all the current decisions we have made worldwide. It's based on all the data worldwide as well. So it's not only for United States also because it's MIT or so. No, it's really done for the whole world. And what I want to do, I normally use this a lot when I work with companies, and so I'm often, as I have done a lot of these trainings, climate literacy trainings with companies, I often use it as a game. But today, obviously, I don't have people to play with me here, so I will do it by myself, and we'll show you a bit what is changing when I do some of the changes, because a lot of people always say, okay, we can actually do carbon storage and then we are sorted. And I want to show you what happens with the carbon storage. And by the way, if you kind of are wondering what are the assumptions they have put here, and for everyone who's a bit critical, you can also look it up. So if you kind of get to we will share with you the link to En-ROADS as well. If you look at these little dots here, you can get more information in the background and you can change some of the assumptions. For example, you could say, when I know the start date at the moment is 2025, you might say, oh, it's not starting this year. It would start on 2026. You could change it in the background. I would really encourage you to try it out for yourself, because it's really a fantastic tool to try all the different solutions you might think of as a company or as a country and so on. So I will do the technological carbon removal. And I will replay it for you because you can see what it has achieved is 0.1 degrees worldwide. So it hasn't brought it down to 1.5 degrees or anywhere near it. 0.1 degree is not bad. If you do it worldwide and you manage to reduce 0.1 degree, it is already an achievement and very, very important. And you will see while I'm going through the tool that we have to put all these solutions together, and it's really, really important. But this alone doesn't solve it. But I will add things now. So you might think, okay, maybe we do the nature-based solution. So this would be, for example, replanting seagrass, replanting trees and things like this. So if I do them full power and we would have high growth in this, and I will replay it for you again, you can see that we achieve another 0.2 degrees then worldwide. So it achieves a little bit more than the technological, but for my understanding of the discourse in the media and what I see, it's often a bit neglected. So we should really prefer much more in the nature-based solution. So Tim, when I heard you talking about that you have a lot of estates as well. So it might be things like with the peatlands, to look after the peatlands, for example, which is a nature-based solution, not to reduce the peat even further. So it's these kind of things as well. Then I think a no-brainer, because a lot of people say, and this is another, I would say, a myth kind of, oh, we have to change so much our life, we can't do this, we just let it all happen because we can't change it. For me, this, for especially the waste and leakage, is really a no-brainer, because I think it's not such a problem to stop leakage and to actually stop waste. For example, one of the biggest emitters we have worldwide is food waste, and we have this in all countries, also in developed countries. And I think it's a no-brainer for me. It's not too much of a change if I don't waste my food, kind of, or if you don't waste it in the supply chain, if you don't waste it in catering in companies and so on. So I will do this fully for you. And you can see just by stopping the waste and the leakage, we have achieved another 0.3 degrees. And then I say, while I'm on this side, I stay with the last two tabs. So I will kind of agricultural emissions, change these ones as well. If I had more time, I would tell you a bit more about this as well. And then I will change the deforestation as well. And because you all will have heard about that this has an impact. So by doing all this, we are now with 2.5 degrees, but obviously we are not at 1.5. So I need to look at the other solutions. And you can see that here on this side, we have all the energy supply. Here in the middle, we have solutions which are aligned a bit with the energy supply, but which are on other sectors as well. And I will start with them first. And please do watch the mix here, because this gives you the global sources of primary energy, and it tells you, for example, in green it's the renewable energies, how big the share is, in blue it's the gas, in red it's the oil, in brown it's the coal. And when I do changes here, you will see a change. So please watch both sides, not only the temperature, but also the one on the left, the global source of primary energy. So if I, for example, decide, okay, let's insulate all buildings, let's make sure we are really doing good insulations everywhere, and I will replay this for you. You can see we have achieved another 0.3 degrees. And I think this is often something a lot of people say don't realize what an impact this area will have. And I think it's, someone mentioned just now in the talks, it has to be also, we need to think about the social dimension as well. And I think you have heard a lot about energy poverty as well, but energy poverty also comes from, for example, having to pay very, very high bills in houses, in flats and so on, for gas, for example, and for electricity. And if you change to renewables and you kind of insulate all the buildings well, and people are actually saving money, and it's often so that obviously the landlord has to invest a bit more, quite often if it's a rented building, but then the tenant will save a lot of money and will really very fast. It will be, as if you're a homeowner, it will be also very fast a payback for you if you improve this energy efficiency of buildings and industry, and also for a company if you do it as a company or another organization. And let's go for more electrification, which obviously we increase also the renewables for this one as well. This, because we have already increased the energy efficiency, as we could, if we do it the other way around, we have a higher impact, but it's still a good one to do, to go for the electrification. With transport, let's do it the other way around. We start with electrification. So we have, I will play. So obviously you will all have heard, let's go for electric cars and let them also be powered by electric energy. And this kind of reduce another 0.1, but this is one which we maybe need to debate. For example, it's a question if people buy a big SUV, for example, or a small electric car, because the embodied carbon is quite different. But this is more specifics. I deal with this in the climate literacy training, but today I don't have the time for it. So I will just move on. Increase the energy efficiency as well in transport, which and you can see already on the right where we are actually with a mix of energy. So by doing all these solutions here in the middle, we have actually reduced our consumption of energy generally, but we are still not at 1.5 degrees. So we need to actually, and you will know that coal and oil, that the fossil fuels are the most important to reduce. So I will actually now start to tax them. So let's tax coal. And you can see by taxing coal now at this point, if I would have done it first, it would have had a higher impact even. But I have already done these things kind of. So with coal is now, we are getting to 1.8 degree. And then I will also tax oil now. And we do this, as this is always assumed, very highly taxed worldwide. Actually, it's interesting the way, because I have already done the electrification of transport before. This will actually be less. If you do it the other way around, it has a higher impact again. Then let's subsidize the renewables. And again, it's the order I'm doing it. So when you try it out also in another way. And to see where we are heading. And then I will now finally put a carbon price on everything. What we are doing, and you can see we have achieved 1.4 degrees. So one of the big myths is as well that we can't achieve it anymore. We could achieve it. As a 1.4 degrees is achievable if we put all our efforts together. As you can see, it has happened here now. And this is really, as I say, it's based on real data with certain assumptions. Please do go to the tool yourself, try it out, put your own assumption in. There's a 500 pages guide as well, where you can check out how everything was calculated and everything. And MIT and Climate Interactive also offers an 8-hour training, which is fantastic. So if you want to really understand a bit more of this tool, you can do this, because what I can't show you in the few minutes is also how it's related to GDP and things like this. So there are lots of different graphs, and see here in the background where you can look at all sorts of other things as well and see what is coming there. And if you want to do it in other languages, it's also translated into lots of other languages. And here it gives you also different graphs and so on. So please do go have a go, try it out. But I hope I have kind of dealt with a few of the myths. The big one is we can't achieve 1.5 anymore. Yes, we can. And I hope you all will join me in trying to do this. And I think now I have done it in the minutes allocated to me, and I'm happy to be on the panel and take also any questions about this. So I will stop sharing now.
Thank you, Petra. I'm sorry, I'm so green. You just have to pretend. In fact, I'm almost tempted to turn the camera off and just speak. But the good news is I'm hardly going to be talking again at all in this session. So that's not so bad. I'm going to pull everybody else up. And before we go into the panel session, oh no, what am I talking about? I'm moderating this panel session, aren't I? Oh dear, what a problem. Never mind.
You've become the myth yourself. Look at
I have. The thing is, I know what the problem is, but I can't move the camera. If I move the camera, it'll mess everything up and I'll lose the connection. So
sustainability paramount, Michael. We have to.
Yeah. So before any questions for Petra?
Actually, Petra, yes, I do, because as you mentioned a number of times, it depends on the sequence that you engage with different activities. What's the ideal sequence? What's the fastest way that we could get to 1.5?
This is a good question. I think some of the fastest way are not, maybe you wouldn't get the political consensus around this. Like carbon price would be a fantastic one to achieve, as a really high carbon price worldwide. And we would make major steps, but it's a question if you get all the governments to agree on this. And I think as you have already talked about it before, it's not likely that we get this in the current climate. So I think it's better to go for things where you can get better buy-in in your own government, like insulating buildings. Also, it's, I think, something which maybe even the United States at the moment would agree that this is a good idea. So therefore, I think you can, as a choosing for each country, what does work in the country and where can you actually achieve policies with most people.
Okay. I'm going to go and play with it. It looks like.
Oh, this is nice.
Me too.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Petra. I'm going to say goodbye to you now, but thank you very much for your time. And now we're going to get onto the panel session. And you're going to have to use your imagination and pretend you can see me. But as Nicole pointed out, I've tried to try to create the impression of greenwashing. It's quite intentional.
It's your aura, Mike.
It is my aura, and it's a deliberate
aura.
It's a deliberate. I'm deliberately trying to emphasize greenwashing, and I think you should be very impressed with how I've done it. Can I ask you, one after the other, boom, 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 what's the biggest myth concerning ESG? And I'm going to ask Robin, Nicole, and Jay in that order. Over to you guys.
Okay. Look, I think we've touched on it in a whole bunch of different ways throughout the morning. And I think it is this myth of the common interest when viewed through individual lenses, when we live in a world of individuality, when we live in a world of individual agendas and entitlement of the things that we want and the way that we want it to be able to achieve this common interest, we need to be prepared to make sacrifices. They might not be great sacrifices, but they will be meaningful if we do them together. And I think that this commonality of interest, this single rock that we're all on floating around the sun, we can't avoid the inevitability of having to accept that there is a common interest. But at the moment, it's a myth, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah, that's a great one. I think I love that one. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and take a myth that might not win me any brownie points here, but one of the myths that you hear is that, you know, this magical panacea that embedding ESG into your business or into your organization, you'll unlock premium pricing, attract top talent, access cheaper capital, outperform the market, and this myth, I think, it might be hard for some to swallow because it comes with, it comes from promises made by our own peers, right? And that's ESG and sustainability leaders and experts, and it is a big part of the ESG mainstream narrative. So the hard truth is this, that like ESG profitability and benefits are often overstated, and we need to course correct this, obviously. And market anomalies like Unilever, Patagonia, Salesforce, Orsted, they're all used as benchmarks, but they're not exceptions to they're not benchmarks. They're exceptions to the rule in the market here. So we're seeing now like premium pricing is eroding, as sustainability becomes more expected, not exceptional. The cost of capital benefits are temporary. ESG fundings are now becoming tighter, and these green bond scrutiny is definitely on the rise here. So, compliance costs, Robin, I'm sure you were talking about this yesterday too when we had a conversation. The compliance costs are rising sharply, right? So, and new firms need to link the costs to the productivity and returns and the effects. This could be anything from the SEC climate rules to CSRD in the EU, net zero in UK. So the bottom line is this: like, there is limited empirical evidence that ESG performance alone leads to this sustained outperformance, shareholder returns, profitability magic panacea. Yeah.
Very brave of you to say that, Nicole. Finding every sustainability consultant's pitch. But well done for saying it. Good to give a balanced view. I'm going to go at a macro level and just address the politicized ESG view that it's anti-business. It's not in the interest of the business. So very much in contrary to what you're saying there, Nicole. But it is become known as a box checking exercise, something that companies have to do to comply. It's a huge drain on resources. And I'd argue actually ESG is part of a broader sustainability strategy that is intrinsic to business success. And as you think about managing risk, all types of risk, not just environmental, social, and governance, but as we think about value creation, and value creation beyond the balance sheet, the financial balance sheet, as we think about planet, people, prosperity for all. I think ESG has been incorrectly labeled as a value remover from business, which is a myth that I would like to call out into the next part of this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's the transverse of that is the legend. And the legend is that sustainability and ESG associated with the sustainability is about doing better business. And your early adopters that have come into the market and have used it to differentiate themselves in a positive way have benefited from it. But yes, absolutely, they're far from being benchmarks because they are early adopters. And we are at the bottom of the curve in this journey. So there's a long way to go, and hopefully they will become legends for the right reasons.
That is the hope, right?
That is the hope, and that they don't get shot down in flames.
Okay, well, hopefully I look a bit better now.
Did you ever lie down or something? A cup of tea?
No, I've done some really clever engineering, actually. I mean, super amazing, super impressive, But no, I've moved the computer. So can we just drill down on what you just talked about? Okay. Myth or truth? ESG is all about net zero and DEI. And it's only about environmental issues like carbon emissions. Myth or truth?
That's a myth, obviously.
By definition.
I need to get more information from you than that. Don't you?
You want more information? Because it's not. I mean, it's sustainability and ESG reporting in its approach is designed to be representative of all aspects of an organization's financial and physical impacts. Now, you cannot say that an organization, regardless of what it does, relies on singular use of resources, that it only has singular inputs and it only has singular outputs. It doesn't. It has multiple inputs, it has multiple outputs, and it uses multiple resources to be able to achieve its ends. So it's going to have multiple impacts, and therefore it's going to have multiple financial risks. And so to say that it's just one thing, or maybe two things, is totally to misrepresent the scope and breadth of what sustainability and ESG reporting is about. Is that the long answer?
I think it's a good answer. And, to add to that,
Nicole's opinion?
I can see where this came from, right? If we look at like just human behavior, society in general, but it is definitely a myth. I agree with you. If mainstream, if most people in society want to simplify things so that they can digest it, I would rather they adopt the understanding that, ESG is more about like business hygiene and a risk intelligence tool. Like that would be more powerful, at least a good, starting off point, instead of just saying, it's about this or about that. Obviously they need something digestible. So let's give them something digestible, right? Like it is a myth. It's not just about that, but what can we simplify for everyone to understand so that we take away from that myth of saying that it's about net zero or DE&I.
The problem is so few organizations actually know what they're doing. And I think this is really, I read a lot of ESG reports. I've gone through a lot of different standards. I work with governments to create standards, and I sit in rooms with people and I say, so what do you actually do? And they said, well, we make this. Yeah, but that's not what you do. That's the output of what you do. And they said, well, we have this client base. And you said, okay, well, that's an outcome. That's not actually what you do. Yeah. And so I think so few organizations really do understand what they do, to the point where they can even describe the extent of their value chain in any accuracy. I think there's so many blind spots in organizations that it's almost impossible for them to be able to get to grips with this. So yeah, to simplify it in some ways is a good first base, it's a first step. I agree with you from that point of view, yeah.
I'd even argue that this is a convenient media narrative, because those are two polarizing topics within the broad spectrum of ESG that people tend to disagree on. There's climate change deniers, and there's people who accept that climate change is a reality and the planet is burning up, and it's not going to be uninhabitable by us all. And then there are people who support the concept of a diverse, equitable, inclusive organization, and there are people who are strongly against it and say that it's not in the spirit of profitable business, just hiring people for the sake of filling a quota. And I think these polarizing issues perpetuated by the media, typically instructed by government agendas or political agendas, has created these sort of weak spots within ESG to undermine the whole concept. And I think most people, unfortunately, are slaves to what the media tell them to be the truth. And we have to really, as a society, beyond sustainability professionals, think for ourselves and understand that these are real issues. Climate change is a real issue. Social inequity is a real issue. And we need to address these if we want to be a more successful society.
Yeah, but we're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Scylla and Charybdis. Here we sit. On the one hand, we have a definite and real tangible situation here for the planet and for society as a whole. And on the other hand, we have to learn to walk before we can run.
Yeah.
He's back.
All right. Okay. So ESG is anti-profit. I know we touched upon this already, but I think it needs to be delved into in a little bit more depth. ESG is anti-profit. There's no business value to ESG. There's no business case to ESG. And then you can use the word sustainability there as well. I think I know you're going to say it's a myth, but I'd like to know why you think. Maybe you don't think it's a myth. I'd like to know why you think that.
Okay.
Why we think it's a sorry. Why you want to know why we think it's a myth, or
is it a myth that ESG is anti-profit, anti-business, that there's no business case for ESG? Is that a myth, or maybe it's true?
No, for me, that's definitely a myth, and this follows on from the previous points we were making, that there is actually a better way to create value for people, planet, and prosperity for all than the way we're currently set up as a society, as an economy. We look at what we're doing. Just we heard from Petra about energy, right? The sun rises and sets every single day. It provides energy, heat, and light, and we can convert that energy into electricity that we can use to mobilize, to power our homes, to power our businesses. And yet we remove carbon from the earth at huge expense. We subsidize companies to do that. We encourage them to refine those resources, again at huge cost and expense, and then ship it all around the world and put it in our cars and put it in our substations, burn it, put carbon in the air, let the planet warm up, and no one's responsible for sequestering that carbon. There's no carbon tax, there's no carbon price, right? Whereas renewable energy, yes, it's not zero carbon. You have to produce the solar panels, you have to produce the wind turbines. That does have a carbon footprint, but there is a definite better way of doing it that is sustainable. Forget about just where you ethically stand. It's sustainable, right? There's no finite resource. You can make the same argument for so many different industries, and their impacts in terms of externalities on planet and society. Tobacco, gambling, all these things that we know to be not good for society. No one's picking up the bill. No tobacco companies picking up the bill for all the people that get cancer in national health services, right? But the shareholders get fantastic returns, so we turn a blind eye, and that's what we need to stop doing.
Yeah, this is a hot debate, is it not? And I'm going to go out on a limb here, Jay, Robin, and Mike.
So it is a myth. It's not a myth.
It is. Okay, so, much of what is presented as value creation, and I'm a very rational, practical, I need to understand it, right? Much of what is presented as value creation today around ESG is very abstract. It's very theoretical, and much of it it's untested at scale. And so I get the pushback. And because of this, oftentimes I'm left with answering to an increasing number of board advisors, board members, CFOs, institutional investors who are asking me the same question. And I'm under the fire here. So I'm just going to try and put it in this perspective. I'm not saying that I believe this always and entirely, but what I'm saying is let's take their point of view of where this criticism and myth comes from. Where is the real measurable business value? Not just the moral positioning or the hopeful projections. And my truthful answer is this: ESG in its current form is not a profitable engine. It's something else. It's definitely something else. And we need to reframe ESG as what it really is, right? So it again, I go back to talking about it being a risk intelligence tool, especially within the financial sector that I work with, a discipline for resource allocation. I think this is the most compelling part, is that it's a diagnostic lens for resilience, and particularly in sectors with exposed regulation, reputational scrutiny, and systemic disruption. And I say this with deep regard. This isn't a downgrade. This is a conversation it's a maturing of the conversation of ESG. Maybe that's where the criticism is coming from. What do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'll take that, because I just spent a great deal of effort and time writing a book about how to do ESG reporting, because I see ESG reporting as a quantitative and qualitative assessment system directly related to risk management, business strategy, and organizational performance. It is a mechanism. It is a tool. It is not the be-all and end-all. Sustainability, I would say, is the overarching agenda that ESG exists within. And sustainability is very much about taking a balanced approach and adding quality. And there is a direct relationship between quality and sustainability. So in saying that, we also acknowledge that some people are just not interested in quality. Yeah, there's a lot of products that are made that are bad quality. The question is, do we as a society want to tolerate them? Do we want to put up with them? How many kids are going to choke to death on a toy because it's not being made well? That kind of comes with the territory here. We're humans, and we believe in this whole idea of having a choice. And sometimes we insist on making bad choices. Okay, we have to wear that. And I think that sustainability, practitioners, people that have been around in it for a while, don't feel comfortable with it, but we have to accept that is the nature of the human condition. Sometimes we don't do stuff in our own best interest. So ESG, yes, I agree with you, absolutely. I think it's a mechanism and a tool, and therefore is not in and of itself a sense of purpose. Sustainability is the sense of purpose that drives us to try and do better. And maybe you think I'm being, pedantic, relying on semantics, but I actually do. I think sustainability as a concept has been around since the dawn of time. When we were living in little villages and foraging for food, we had to try and work out how best to survive. And I think sustainability is very much based in that quest for survival in the best possible way.
Because they didn't do ESG reporting back then. I don't think when we were foraging around for food living in caves, they probably didn't do ESG reports back then.
Well, there was an ESG report. It was called a tiger, yeah? And if you made a mistake, it would eat you, and then, no more problem.
Yeah, okay. All right. Anyone got anything else to add before we move on?
Yeah, I like to put things into terms that people can all relate to and understand, right? I know I spoke about, the fossil fuel industry, and I just want to double click on that, right? So, I mean, Robin made the point of humans make bad decisions sometimes. I think sometimes they just are uneducated or unaware of making the better decision. It's not a case of, I'm purposely trying to do something that's detrimental to the planet or my fellow human being. For example, we know that the price of fossil fuels is increasing year on year. There's energy inflation, 7 to 10% in the UK, right? It goes up, natural gas and electricity. And people are just price takers from the grid. Businesses just pay their utility bill. The price goes up every year. They carry on doing it. A solar panel deployed on a roof, right, will generate electricity for 30 years. And you can fix the price of it today, and it's much cheaper than the price from the grid, than being a price taker from the grid. It's zero carbon when it's on the roof, right? This is just common sense. This is a financial decision. And because it's wrapped in this ESG agenda, you get so much pushback. But when you just look at the numbers, it's not even a decision. It's a no-brainer. It's a slam dunk, right? I mean, this is what infuriates me. And when you go and speak to management teams, executive teams, and boards, and you explain these opportunities, and energy is one, mobility is another. The way you treat your staff in terms of looking after their well-being and making sure that they're actually at work and productive and not sick in bed because their back hurts because the chair's not right, or they're not being looked after from a mental health capacity or physical health capacity. These things are just common sense. And a lot of the time, I don't think they're intentionally making bad decisions. I think they're just unaware of the better decision or the sustainable decision.
Jay, I can't tell you the number of times I've sat with people, organizations, whatever, and I've said, I can show you how to reduce costs, increase profits, reduce turnover, increase your workplace contentment, all these different positives. And the people will sit down and say, but I don't have time. I don't have time. I already have a busy life. I already have a busy day. I'm already overcommitted. I'm already stressed. I don't need more problems. Yeah, humans don't like making the extra effort when they already feel that they're busting a nut to be able to get through every day. And I think people, I agree, would understand the financial viability of a solar panel, but they have to go to the solar panel shop and they got to choose solar panels, and then they got to get some guy to go and put it on the roof, and it's all
arrange a green loan to fund it all, which is going to be cheaper than the capital.
But getting kids to eat their vegetables is the same situation, or having a gym instructor say, I can give you, washboard abs, and you're like, man, I don't really feel like getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to run. Like,
exactly.
If you say it's good for you, maybe that's the thing.
No, what we need to do is say, I'll pay you to do it, and then maybe people will actually.
Just show them the numbers, Robin. That's what I do.
I show them the numbers, but I tell you the number of time I've shown the numbers, and it still gets the same. Yeah. We know it's a good idea, but
show them numbers and remove the friction, I should say.
All right. So Warren Buffett, I think he said ESG reporting is asinine. I think it was ESG reporting he was referring to when he said that. And a lot of people, so much hassle. Oh, so much hassle. Presumably, you're not going to argue that it's not hassle, because it is hassle. But is it asinine? I mean, is there a positive side to this?
I don't know. What's wrong with asses? I don't know why asses have such a bad rep. I mean, they're very good at carrying loads and going up a trail, and I wouldn't want to be born as one. It's hard work. So,
you know,
okay, Warren, you've obviously got an issue with quadrupeds.
Well, he's
Maybe in
retired.
general, I don't know. But I mean, what a nonsense talk. I mean, really. The guy makes loads and loads of money by sitting in an office and making some decisions with a huge team of people around him to be able to decide what to invest in next. Okay, that's not really ESG related, is it? And I'm not quite sure that he and his team would be considered as sustainability or ESG experts or practitioners in any way, shape or form. So why has he got an opinion?
Everyone's entitled to an opinion.
Absolutely, but you don't have to.
You know what? I'm going to disagree with you there, Jay. I don't think you should have an opinion about. There's lots of things I don't have opinions about. Therefore, I don't express a view about them. I think that if you don't, okay, maybe you're allowed to have an opinion.
Yeah,
but you
opinion.
shouldn't express your opinion if you don't know about it.
No one should pay attention to it. But Warren Buffett, you've got to respect him for what he's achieved in his life, the wealth he's created. But if you look at, let's just take two examples: British American Tobacco and Coca-Cola. Then he's made a load of money. Berkshire Hathaway's made a load of money of those two investments. How many people have got diabetes off the back of Coca-Cola? How many people? What is the cost to taxpayers in all the countries where people have been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes who have to be treated and funded by the taxpayer? He's benefited from that. Him and his associates. We've all suffered, both from a health perspective and a financial perspective, right? British American Tobacco, same thing, right? How many fields have we grown tobacco on that we could have grown crop food to feed people who are starving around the world? How much water have we used and wasted growing that crop? How much freight have we used to ship that product all over the world to give people cancer? Yes, they get a dopamine hit and it's a relief after a stressful day at work, but he's made money off the back of addiction, and we've all suffered the consequences. So it's the same with money, right? If someone is in debt, someone is owed money, and you have to look at every single aspect of human life in the same way. If someone is sick and there's a cost to treat that person, someone's made a profit from it somewhere. And unfortunately, the way capitalism has evolved since the days of Milton Friedman, we spoke about this, Michael, when we first met, right?
We certainly did.
At the expense of people, planet, and prosperity for all. You walk yourself into these problems, and there is a better way of doing it. I can give you a million examples. I've covered a few. I'm going to let Nicole tell me I'm wrong.
No. Well, there are some good things about Milton Friedman's theories of economics. It's not all bad. I try to look at both sides and be very, understanding of either side. But I think one of the things that might be a big pushback here is that if we ignore that right now ESG is a cost center, it's not providing any revenue. It is a truth. It is a truth. Like, it's hard to disprove. It's not a truth, right? So what we need to kind of be careful about is this, corporate virtue signaling, right? Or just personally, like, one of the biggest pushbacks here that started the whole fire of like destroying the ESG hype or whatever it may be is that, the expectation of companies, of like leaders of companies to take public stances on issues like race or gender or climate or things like this, especially when they're not taking their own medicine, when they're very inconsistent internally about how they run their businesses, about, what their businesses are about, Jay, like you just said, Coca-Cola, people still drink it, like it's if you take that away and start putting regulation on that, you're taking the autonomy of people's rights to choose to drink sugary soda. So, I mean, there are a lot of
sugar tax. That's what the government has decided. There should be a sugar tax.
But
go on. Sorry, go on.
No, but just getting back to the myth of being a hassle and a drain on company resources, the way that companies' business models are set today, of course it's going to be a drain. Of course it's going to be a hassle because we spread so fast, so wide globally that we don't even know, what the left hand and the little toe is doing, So you have these really complex value chains and business models that make it difficult to do the reporting in a clean way. If you were a small business and you only worked locally, that's not an issue here. So the cost here is because we've made it too complicated for ourselves. And maybe it's, the big four,
Sorry, Nicole.
Yeah,
Sorry. Everyone said this about accounting, yeah? When back in the 1970s when accounting practices came out, turned out to be a really good idea. So I'm sorry. Yes, it costs a bit to start off with.
It's the same people doing it, though. It's the same people doing it. It's like the big white shoe firms that are creating this like complexity in it. It doesn't need to be.
I don't think it's complex, and I think that this was an error of judgment by EFRAG last year to release a data set which has been totally misrepresented, has been totally misunderstood, has been totally misquoted by auditors, ESG practitioners, you name it. Everyone jumped on a spreadsheet in the middle of last year and said, there's 1,000 whatever data points. No, there isn't. It's subject to double materiality. It's subject to your own assessment, and it might only be 50 data points that are relevant to your business. Okay, so you've done the exercise while thinking about it. Yeah. And this is the point. Really, when accounting practices were a disaster, there was no international standardization. What was a balance sheet? What was a profit and loss? What was a cash flow statement? Wow. Okay, there was no standardization. There needed to be. That people needed to have a common benchmark to be able to interpret information, whether you want to say that's investors, whether you want to say that's customers, whoever it is. There needed to be some standardization of it. And that is going to start off as a bit of a cost. But once it's established, it is cost positive.
That's true. That's true. Okay. And then you can use the data.
It's a short hurdle to get over it. Not a big deal.
Okay, so I think we're almost out of time now.
Go, Jay, sorry.
No, it's okay. Because I think Nicole's playing devil's advocate here. I hope she is anyway. But I'm very bravely.
That's what we're supposed to do. We can't all say the same thing.
100%. But I think we're focusing only on what I call ESG defense, right? Which is reporting, compliance, risk management, etc. We're missing the complete ESG offense play, right? When I was in-house head of ESG at Finastra, we created solutions to unbanked women in Bangladesh and bring more financial inclusion into a country which historically, ostracized women from finance. Yeah. We built, green loans for syndicated lending that encourage borrowers to switch to green steel and sustainable timber and other products, and be rewarded for doing so by a reduced interest rate, right? So there is so many, and that generated revenue for the business, which allowed them to employ more people and create more wealth in the economy. So these, ESG has got definitely two roles. And I think a lot of practitioners and a lot of businesses just focus on that defense.
Oh, for sure. They're cutting it down.
Okay, look, I'm sorry, but I wanted. There is a question I wanted to ask, and we're really out of time. So I'm going to ask it to Robin, but I'll give you to Nicole and Jay an opportunity to come in if you want to. But even so, Robin, I want you to give me a 45-second answer. The myth of the commons. What's that all about?
Well, this is the common interest. This is the common asset. This is the common resource. This is the common understanding that we're all on the same piece of rock floating around the sun, and we have a common interest in making sure that we don't blow it up, that we don't make life unpleasant for one another, and we try and understand that there is a finite amount of resource that we can draw upon, and we need to be smart about it. Okay, so it's a myth because actually in practice that doesn't happen. Actually in practice, we are all individuals going through our daily lives, trying to do the best we can with our own personal agendas. And the last thing we're doing as we get up in the morning, wake our kids up and take them to school is actually thinking that there's someone else on the other side of the world doing it with a lot less resources, but with the same goal and with the same intention and the same hope for tomorrow. And that to me is in fact a tragedy in many ways. So we could say there's a tragedy of the commons. Well, yes, there would need to be a commons to start off with, but I don't think there is. I don't think there's a common understanding.
All right. So the myth of the commons. Before we wrap up, Jay, Nicole, do you have it? I'm going to give you 30 seconds each if you've got anything else to add. Don't feel the need. You don't have to say anything.
Okay, great. I would say that, you know, I've been the devil's advocate in this conversation, just trying to give a point of view that maybe isn't always spoken about, but we need to have answers for. And I think that there is an enormous amount of value to using this kind of information and to practicing these sort of exercises and introducing these frameworks, because it's opening up another, you know, economic innovation channel that we can actually do quite a lot in and think about the world in a completely different way, especially when it comes to business and economics. So there's a lot of hope behind that. It's just important that we always consider answering the criticisms and the myths and making sure that, you know, we give a very solid business case and understanding of what our purpose here is as experts in sustainability and ESG.
So I think there's hope. There's a new hope. So the theme for today's session is ESG Strikes Back, and you're saying a new hope. I like that.
What is it, Star Wars?
Exactly. Yeah. Returner J. Would you like to? Is there anything you'd like to conclude with?
Well, it's just this myth of the commons that Robin was talking about. I think, you know, a lot of people would consider it a myth because they just are self-interested and think, you know, I'm not going to be around in 100 years' time when the planet burns up, so I can do whatever I want while I'm living on this planet. But my dream is, you know, my children turn to me one day, or even my grandchildren, if I'm lucky enough to meet them, turn to me and say, "What did you do, Dad? What did you do, Granddad? When we knew about all these problems, what did you do about it? And what did your colleagues do about it? What did your friends do about it?" And I can tell them inspiring stories of how we made the world a better place for them to enjoy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have actually met my grandchildren. I've actually got 3, and I think people do care about what the world's going to be like after they're gone, don't they? I mean, you might not care about what it's going to be like in 200 years' time, because no one could think that far ahead. But I'd like to think that when I'm gone, my kids, my grandchildren, will inherit a better place. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. But
can I just jump on that, because I'm going to support Nicole with the devil's advocate here, because I think there's a lot of people in the world that make enough money to think that they can afford the consequences.
Yeah, true.
And I'm not sure we can.
I agree. There are, and I agree. Right. Thank you very much, everybody. Until those watching, we have another session starting in 15 minutes on social risk and ESG investing. But thank you, Jay, Robin, and Nicole, and speak to you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Ciao.